offense.
Yeah. It's an easy way to shift into one of my favorite topics that I was kind of luring you into a little bit, but Lane Kiffin. My dad went to LSU. I went to Ole Miss. My house is officially divided. We are at wit's end with each other when it comes to different opinions on Lane Kiffin. Where do you see Lane Kiffin? Do you think this is the best move for him? How did you feel about all of this? Like, just, I mean, I know you're a journalist, so you don't want to be one way or the other, probably. But like, what was your first instinctive thing when he said, "All right, I'm out of Ole Miss. I'm gone." He does all of his different interviews, and Ole Miss is in uproar. We're like, man, what are you doing? You know. But what was your first thought?
Well, the truth is, and this happens a lot in my industry, I knew a couple weeks before, right? I mean, and I think, but Lane is fairly unpredictable, so you kind of never know, until it happens, right? Until it happens, you never really know. But I had a pretty strong suspicion, at least probably 2 weeks or so, or 2.5 weeks before the Egg Bowl, that he was going to leave.
He was jetting.
So yeah, it was that. I've covered many people in stories in my career, and starting with Brian Kelly's firing to Lane Kiffin's, or I guess Brian Kelly's firing. So that was in late October, last week of October, and through Ole Miss's run in the college football playoff. So that span of close to 2 months or so. I've never covered anything quite like that.
Oh, we were stalking you.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
We were waiting for you to have the guys, we just got the Lane Kiffin thing, and I remember my buddy Lawrence Boujal, shout out to Lawrence. He's Stanislaus guy as well. But he'd be calling me. He'd be like, "Hey man, I'm thinking about putting this bet down. Have you heard?" I was like, man, no one knows. And then I remember being like, you need to go check out Ross Dellenger's stuff, because he's gonna sooner or later pop something out there.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, there's all these things unfolded. Brian Kelly gets fired, and then Scott Woodward gets fired. The governor of Louisiana does his news conference.
What the hell?
LSU's in this coaching search, and then there's this. And then I went and visited Lane in Ole Miss maybe 2-3 weeks before probably the Egg Bowl or so, before their game against Florida. Sat down with him, did that big story on him and how his life has changed and all this stuff, and and then you go to the drama of the Egg Bowl. I went there and I covered that. I was supposed to cover Michigan, Ohio State, and I told my bosses, I was like, I probably need to fly into Starkville, because this is going to be, the biggest story of the year.
Yeah.
And I anticipated, and a lot of times I'm wrong on this. I've been wrong plenty. When you're a journalist, you're trying to see the story before it happens, right? You're trying to predict it as far as travel and budgeting stories and all that stuff. And I just kind of thought that he would go, from the Egg Bowl, and he would then, all this drama would unfold in Oxford. And so I went from Starkville to Oxford, and then I would end up in Baton Rouge. And I told my bosses that before Thanksgiving, right? The week of Thanksgiving, when we had to move my Michigan, Ohio State, we canceled my trip there, and I booked the trip. And my bosses were like, "Are you sure? Are you sure this is going to happen?" I'm like, "Trust me, I need to go from Starkville to Oxford to Baton Rouge, because that's probably what's going to happen." And lo and behold, one of the rare times you get it right, exactly how everything happened. And thankfully I was there, because it was a huge story. And I found myself in a car in a parking lot across the street from the Ole Miss Chancellor's house, while Lane and Keith Carter were meeting that Saturday night at the house. Saw them pull out, and was able to sort of document all that story. And then everybody was waiting to report that Lane was leaving for sure, right? And all us reporters are all competitive, and nobody had reported it yet. Everybody had just sort of hinted to it that it was possibly going to happen or likely going to happen. And then after that meeting, and I was in the car, watched Keith Carter and Lane pull out, I was able to learn really from people back in Baton Rouge that they were sending planes to get Lane the next day. And, that was good enough for me, right? And so I could report, not just being on the ground in the bushes outside of the chancellor's house and seeing this meeting unfold, but was able to pair that with, LSU is sending planes for Lane Kiffin. And, that story went out, and I think it's probably going to be the most read story of so far in my career, right? I mean, it's like, and so, yeah, needless to say, the bosses were like, okay, you made the right call.
And and when this is all happening, like like I said, you're a Mississippi State guy, so I mean you didn't have one foot in either side of these holes, whatever. So you're kind of like, you probably felt a little better about it knowing that he had left the rival, but at the same time, like, you understood it, right?
Yeah, I didn't. As I am a Mississippi State grad, but you kind of, as a journalist, try to be unbiased and impartial, right? And you kind of separate the two. But there are plenty of people in Starkville that are happy that I think Lane Kiffin has left Ole Miss because he's had a lot of success there, and he's had a lot of success against Mississippi State there. He only lost one time.
Your good friend, who I don't know any of the, I mean, these are all colleagues of yours. One of my favorites, I'm just going to say him right now, Josh Pate. He's one of them. But then Paul Feinbaum, which he actually mentioned you a lot, here and there. But he didn't like it at all. He was like, this is characteristic of him. This is not going to end well for him. So he had his own little opinions on it all. I'll state mine. I don't think LSU is bringing him in to go 9-3 or even the cute little 8-4 season. That's where I think my dad and I do agree is that Brian Kelly ended up getting cut for losing those those one or two games that snuck up on him, like starting the year off with USC and losing. Like that pissed off the LSU fan base. And so I'm of the thinking, and you can give me your opinion, that Lane Kiffin does not have a lot of leash here. I think this is going to be one of those things where the first 2 years, if he's not in an SEC championship or he's not playing for something, I mean, they're going to be like, brother, we did not bring you here to just have average seasons. Now, here's the second thing. You look at his schedule. It is hell in a cell. And that's just getting out of the SEC. So, just from what you know about Lane Kiffin, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, not only the SEC, I think they have Clemson.
Bro, starting it off.
Yeah, start the season.
And they go to Ole Miss like week 3.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
It's a bloodbath.
Well, every fan base obviously is passionate about winning and winning championships and all that, but there is something historically different about the LSU fan base. And you can go all the way back. And I remember sitting in the car with my dad. We were at Nick Saban was coach at LSU. This was his second year. His first year they went like 8-4 maybe, and they lost at home to Troy, right? So or UAB. They lost at home to UAB, and everybody was on edge entering the second year. And they lost a few games, and I think they were sitting at 5-3. After a loss at home to Ole Miss, and we were in the car. I remember we left the Tiger Stadium and we were listening to LSU radio, and here's Nick Saban, and he's like, he's 13-7 or 13-8 in his 1.5 seasons, right? And he's going to get fired after that season, right? They're 5-3. He's definitely going to get fired. You could hear the radio. I mean, they are after him, and then they didn't lose a game again for that season. And they won the SEC championship, and they played in the Sugar Bowl, and they beat Illinois in the Sugar Bowl. And then, of course, 2 years later, they won it all there. So just an example of a historical example of sort of the LSU fan base always sort of on edge. And I remember even Les Miles, they won it all in 2007. In 2008, they had a fairly poor year. I think, again, they went like 8-4 or something. Yep. And that year, I can remember, fans wanting him fired. It's like a year after a championship. So, and then obviously, 2 years after Ed Orgeron won a national championship, he got fired. Yep. There's probably some other things involved with that. But, but needless to say, Lane was brought in to win national titles and compete for SEC national championships. So.